Welcome back to Ironsworn, Rime the Frostmaiden. This is episode 12. In the last episode, Karl and Haf traversed the tundra between Cair and Cair after having dealt with the Knights of the Black Sword subgroup of the Children of Arl and dealt with that menace and freed the town of Cair. Now they are heading to Cair, where Garrett, who had apparently escorted Bridget and Tessa up the side of Kelvin's Cairn, had been going to get supplies before summoning the mountain. Kelvin's Cairn dominates the background behind Cair. Cair was originally built by mountaineers who were summoning. The Cair in Cair, though, has been long since destroyed, in contrast to the one in Cair. Along with Karl and Haf is Boy, Garrett's best and favorite sled dog, who hopefully will be able to guide them to wherever Garrett was. The two of them enter Cair and kind of go along the main road past the ruined Cair. They see this large house, which is obviously the speaker's house, and they kind of stumble upon this shop that says Frozen Far Expeditions. Karl remembers this as something that Keegan, Garrett's husband, told them about, that Garrett was going to go resupply at Frozen Far. So they spot this, and they're going to go right in and talk to the people here in Frozen Far Expeditions. Looks like there's two proprietors here in Frozen Far, a human and a dwarf. Karl nods at them and approaches them eagerly. He says, excuse me, I'm looking for a couple of girls. They were escorted by a man named Garrett, and they were supposed to be going up to Kelvin's Cairn maybe a week or so ago. Did you see anything about them? And the fellow nods, says, yeah, I remember Garrett. You've long worked with him. And yeah, he came by and got supplies, got a lot of supplies, actually, for quite a big group. I saw them kind of milling about outside and did the best that I could to get him some climbing gear and whatnot that he would need for his large group, and gave him some advice on where to set up base camp. I says, oh gosh, that's terrific. Can you give us directions? The fellow says, oh yes, of course, happy to. Are you well equipped? Now, Karl fortunately does have some of the supplies from the dwarves in Bryn Shander that he helped out with iron ingots. I think that he's doing pretty well. So he says, yeah, I think we're okay. You know, if you have any advice, I'm love to take it. And you know what? Maybe we're going to try to secure an advantage here. And Haf is going to help us, being friendly and pleasant. Awesome. A strong hit. So we're going to get some momentum from that. And then on our roll to go out to the base camp, we're going to have a bonus as well. Karl picks this guy's brain, asks him about mountain climbing. Karl hasn't been mountain climbing. He's a forester, so he doesn't really know very much about it. So he kind of figures out how to use all the gear and whatnot. And he's kind of talking with this guy, and Haf is chit-chatting with the dwarf. And it comes out that Cair does have some problems. It seems like there's someone stealing things from around town, and no one's been able to spot them or get sight on them, even though there are things that vanish almost directly in sight. Karl's, making note of that, but he's gotten his gear. He's ready to go. He's not going to tackle that quest at this time, but maybe he'll come back and see if he can help out the people of Cair once he's rescued Bridget and Tessa. So they gear up and head out to the mountain. This is going to be undertake a journey. We do have that bonus from our advantage that we just got. Nonetheless, that is a miss. 10 and a 9 on the challenge dice is super unfortunate. And the pay the price is something of value is lost or destroyed. So I think that as they are heading off in the direction of Kelvin's Cairn, Boy, the dog, just takes off. He thinks he knows where his master is, and he heads off towards the mountain, leaving Karl and Haf to kind of stumble along without their helpful dog guide. So this is going to be harder for them to find that base camp. They got directions at least, but I think they're going to get a little bit lost maybe. We'll try again to undertake that journey. All right, a week hit, so they eventually get to where the base camp is, but it costs them some supply. So they're looking around the base camp here. There's no one here, but there's a bunch of sled dogs. You see 2 tents pitched in the snow near an icy outcropping that acts as a natural windbreaker. Between the tents is an overturned sled. Still harnessed to the sled are 5 howling dogs. Looks like these dogs have broken into a container of food. Looks like they've been here for a while. They are looking pretty miserable. We still don't see Boy. We'll have to figure that out later. So Karl and Haf cut loose the sled dogs. The dogs run back to Cairn. They kind of look around at this base camp here, and I think we're going to gather some information. All right, a strong hit. We get a lot of specific information out of this. We know that there were about 12 people or so in the party that was heading up the mountain. We see their gear. Some of the gear has been left here. There's food enough for people for quite some time. So we're going to go ahead and take some of that food and head up the mountain, I guess, is the best thing to do. As Karl and Haf get out their ropes and ice axes and other climbing gear, they head on up. The howling wind, blowing snow, and slippery ice make the climb treacherous. Ahead, you see 4 mountain goats perched on a large rock formation around which you must navigate. The goats don't look threatening, which is good, but it's going to be tricky making it around this little outcropping. I think this is going to be a face danger for them. On a weak hit, they make it around. I think that at one point, Haf slips. Karl's heart goes right up into his throat. He grabs onto his friend and manages to get them around, but that was very stressful. So we're going to endure stress on that one. And we're going to get a strong hit. We're going to take some momentum from that and press forward up the mountain. Hundreds of feet up the mountain, you come to a glistening white expanse of packed snow. As you get halfway across it, you hear a loud crack from higher up the mountain, followed by a rumbling noise as the ground starts to tremble. It's an avalanche. This massive wall of snow and ice and rocks begins hurtling down towards them. This is also going to be a face danger for them. On a weak hit, they manage to avoid getting crushed by the avalanche, but I think that they lost some of their supplies, their ropes, maybe a couple of ice axes, their crampons, things that they are going to want for climbing the mountain higher up. But they didn't get buried by the avalanche, and they have survived it. They look up the mountain, look at each other, be like, what in the world were they thinking climbing this mountain? There's got to be some explanation. Hopefully we'll find them, and we'll find out what's going on here. Continuing on up the mountain, you reach a steep, snow-covered incline dotted with jagged rocks. Lying face down in the snow, barely conscious, is a humanoid in blood-stained winter clothing. So the two of them see this figure run over. It looks like he's injured. Karl is going to try to help and heal him. That is a miss on trying to heal this climber, which is really unfortunate. Let's see what the price is. It causes a delay or puts you at a disadvantage. I think that maybe they've been going up the mountain now. There's only 4 hours of daylight during the Rime of the Frostmaiden, so I think that it's starting to get dark. They know that climbing in the dark is a bad idea. I think that they're going to set up a tent here and try to make camp so that they can tend to this injured fellow. And as they are setting up camp and delayed here without any warning or sound, 2 massive crag cats jump off of nearby boulders right onto Karl and Haf. These crag cats are big and dangerous. They love the taste of human flesh. So they're both taken by surprise. This is going to be a fight with these cats. I think these crag cats are going to be a dangerous foe. Certainly in the adventure is written, they're not intended to be extremely perilous. So we are going to enter the fray. We got ambushed, so we roll wits. On a weak hit, I think I'm going to take the initiative so that we can begin with a strike. Taken off guard, these 2 cats pounce on us. We don't have our weapons at hand. We are in the middle of setting up camp. So I think that they're rolling around on the ground, trying to keep these cats off of them. Karl was able to kick one of them away. He rolls around, grabs up his axe, and hacks at the cat. And on a weak hit, we inflict our harm, but then lose initiative. Karl manages to clip one of the cats, but then he slips on some ice and debris and is almost about to fall off the mountain. He manages to save himself, and now the cats come back and begin to claw at them. On a strong hit on a clash, we are going to inflict our harm and go ahead and inflict additional harm. Karl and Haf now trying to get a good foothold, hacking away at these horrible, monstrous cat creatures, and we're going to try to end the fight here. We managed to drive off the cats. They're still alive out there somewhere, and they do love to eat people. So I think that the cost is that they're maybe going to be a problem for us later on, maybe when we head back down the mountain, which is not great. But for right now, they've driven them away. They managed to finish setting up camp, and Karl is going to try to help this climber once again as they settle in over the long night. All right, a weak hit on heal is going to cost some supply. That's not too surprising. He manages to help out this climber who is going to rest up and hopefully recover by morning and tell them kind of what's going on here. In the morning, the climber recovers and introduces himself as Garrett and tells Karl and Haf kind of the whole tale. So Garrett picked up Tessa and Bridget in Targos. They came and hired him to escort them up Kelvin's Cairn. He didn't ask too many questions. He was a little bit curious, and they were a little bit evasive. They both seemed a little strange, kind of spaced out, and they were very quiet along the whole journey. Once he got to Cairn, he discovered that there was a bunch of other people that were wanting to summit the mountain as well. And he thought, hey, I'm going up there anyways, might as well take as many as will pay me. Now, the others also, he thought, seemed very strange. They were acting unusually quiet, not really, chit-chatting with each other. Once they made the base camp, they were heading up the mountain, and they were attacked by a Yeti, one of these horrible monsters that we have not yet encountered, but we know that it ripped off a dwarf's head for the dwarves that were headed towards Bryn Shander with their sled of iron ingots. So there's a Yeti up on this mountain somewhere. Garrett lured it away from the rest of the climbers. The rest of the climbers scattered. He doesn't know where they are, but they're probably somewhere still on the mountain. And this includes Tessa and Bridget. So we're going to mark progress on finding them. Once Garrett recovers, he insists on coming with Karl and Haf to try to rescue the party that had hired him to lead them up this mountain. I think Karl and Haf try to dissuade him, but with no luck. Also in the morning, Boy has discovered them. Boy, barking, excited, jumping all around Garrett. The two of them hug, and Karl and Haf look on, and it's like, okay, well, the four of us, let's go. This next stretch of the mountain is a quite perilous climb. We have to zigzag along narrow ridges, having to use tiny little footholds. So this is also going to be a face danger with edge. I think that this is still super stressful for Karl. He is not an accomplished mountain climber, and he just is seeing his death around every single corner. So he's worried and stressed, but manages to press through past the perilous part of the climb. Up ahead on your left is a 15-foot high, 10-foot wide cave mouth. There's blood on the snow some distance from the cave mouth. Garrett says that this is where we were ambushed by that Yeti. You have to be careful. It probably lives in there. Karl and Haf nod, get out their weapons. Now, long ago, Karl had made an arrow specifically designed to harm a Yeti. So he's going to go ahead and get that out and knock it. Haf gets his spear ready. Garrett doesn't have any weapons, so they hand him one of their ice axes, and they head into this cave together. Entering the cave, they first encounter a deep chasm. They really can't see the bottom of it. There's a couple of bridges across it. One is an ice bridge, and the other is a stone bridge. Garrett, I think, is at this point is probably leading the expedition. He knows more about mountain climbing and probably knows more about caves. So he looks at the stone bridge and leads them across it. They enter a 10-foot high tunnel. The floor is littered with bones, and there are a number of bodies here, including a few in the party that Garrett had been leading. Karl quickly looks at them and does not identify Bridget or Tessa, so there is at least still some hope that they are alive. There's a bunch of crude niches in the wall where there are humanoid heads that have been placed in the ice here. It looks like this Yeti keeps some trophies of those that it kills. They press on into the cave, still hopeful that they're going to find Bridget and Tessa and maybe the rest of the climbers. They enter into what must be the Yeti's den. There is, in fact, a Yeti here, about an 8-foot tall, fur-covered creature, as well as a very small Yeti. This small Yeti creature is batting around someone who's curled up in a defensive posture. It looks like this little Yeti tyke is having a grand old time tormenting this poor human. Garrett yells at the Yeti tyke. Karl raises his arrow, points it at the larger Yeti. The larger Yeti takes the tyke and goes and runs in a corridor. It looks like they are not interested in fighting. And Karl and Haf go over to check out this injured person. As the two of them are reassuring to this poor person who's curled up, who's been scratched and battered around by this little Yeti, she looks up and it is Tessa. Haf lets out a cry, wraps his arms around her. She is shocked. She doesn't really know what's happening. She's utterly confused. She has this strange expression on her face. And Karl is stunned that they managed to find Tessa and find her alive. That means that his sisters got to be close. We're going to mark progress on find and return Tessa home, but we are not going to mark it on Bridget yet. Hopefully we will find Bridget maybe further up the mountain. Karl and Haf and Garrett and Boy kind of throw a threatening glare at the Yeti mom holding on to her tyke, and Haf holding on to Tessa. As they exit the cave, though, they see a terrible sight coming up the mountain towards them. A full-size Yeti carrying a goat under one arm looms in front of them. Karl lets out a startled yell, draws back his arrow, and they are going to enter the fray. We really want a strong hit on this one. If Karl can shoot this thing with his special arrow, we will be golden. Otherwise, this is going to be a bit of a tough fight. I think that this Yeti is going to be a formidable opponent. And Haf is kind of burdened by taking care of Tessa. So it's just going to be Garrett helping out here. Well, we get a miss, and that's super unfortunate. So they're rocked back, surprised by this Yeti. It lifts the goat and hurls it at Karl. Karl's not able to get his shot off. He gets battered by this goat, and the fight is on. I think as soon as this Yeti hurls the goat for distraction, it's just going to charge right in and start clawing the heck out of Karl and Garrett. Oh, that's going to be a miss, which is bad. Karl gets all kinds of cut up here and misses his endure harm. So he is just rocked back. He shakes off the goat, or tries to, but then the Yeti's right on him, and the Yeti's going to probably go for its signature move of ripping his head off. Not too far in the future here. He's got to try to get an advantage. He's going to clash with it again. At least gets a weak hit this time. Fortunately, he's backpedaling. He manages to get his shot off with his special arrow. So this is going to inflict an additional 1d6 harm. Let's roll it. Let's hope for a high number here. 2. All right. That's it could be worse. We'll mark 2 boxes for that. Karl's trying his best to not get his head ripped off. He fired off that one arrow. He drops his bow, draws his axe, and tries to close with the thing. Garrett is trying to hack away at it with his ice axe, but it's not really made for a weapon. So they're doing something, but this thing is big. Okay, that's a miss on this combat. I think that we're going to have to burn momentum, because otherwise this is going to go bad really quick. So let's burn momentum, at least turn that into a weak hit. That gets us to do some damage to it, but we are going to pay the price. Karl is going to get hurt. Takes 3 damage and is going to, fortunately gets a strong hit on his endure harm, gets a little bit of that momentum back, and he's going to keep trying to keep this thing off of him, hacking away with his axe. No, a miss. Oh, this could be the end. If you're at 0 health, you have to mark wounded or maimed. All right. Well, we had cleared wounded from earlier when we fought the Knights of the Black Sword, because we took a good long rest after that. But now he's wounded again, which is going to make everything harder. And the Yeti is coming in, scratching away at them. They get a weak hit, which is fortunate, do some damage. He takes the damage in his momentum, and then is going to have to endure harm. Manages to press on, which is great. The Yeti comes in for a good old head rip-off move. Karl manages to fend him off with his axe, still doing some damage. I think Karl is pretty freaked out at this point, seeing that this Yeti wants to rip his head off, and he likes having his head attached. And gets a miss on endure stress. That's going very poorly. If you were at 0, you must mark shaken. Well, we just got 0 spirit, so we are shaken. We're wounded, we're shaken. We have got to try to turn the tide here. So we're going to use our turn the tide move and desperately try to do some damage here. That is a strong hit, which we really needed. We'll take the momentum from that, and we are going to use that to end the fight. That also gives us a strong hit. Garrett and Karl are hacking away at this Yeti. Finally, Karl gets in just an absolutely lucky shot right up on the side of this thing's head, tears its horn off, stuns it briefly, and then Karl buries his axe deep in its chest. The Yeti slumps down, and then they kick it off the side of the mountain. It tumbles to its doom. They managed to kill the Yeti, which has been, frankly, a terror of the Dale for some time. It's killed dwarves, so I think that they did some good here, which is great. Unfortunately, this doesn't get them any closer to finding Bridget, so Garrett now wounded, shaken, no spirit left, no health left, but we've got to press on because every hour counts now. So he is going to get Garrett to get back on the trail and lead him up. Climbing to not quite the peak, but getting pretty close, you come to the edge of a vast and deep crevasse with nowhere to go but down. A collapsed tent lies half buried in the snow near the precipice. Jutting out of a nearby snowbank is a pair of blue leather boots. Next to this grim display, a figure in cold weather clothing sits in the snow, her knees pulled into her chest. Horns protrude from underneath the figure's fur-lined hood. Whew, well, fortunately, it's not Bridget frozen to death here. This looks like one of the other climbers that came up with Garrett. Garrett confirms, yeah, they were with the group. They must have run off. Karl looks around. He finds the remnants of this camp and doesn't find anybody else. He looks down the crevasse. Did someone fall down there maybe? Is it possible that other climbers made it down that way? And he doesn't spot anything. They have come to the end of the line. There's nowhere else to go on this mountain. With a heavy heart, Karl helps Haf get Tessa off the mountain. Garrett and Boy also helping as much as they can. They get down to the base camp at least, and are going to have to rest there before pressing back to Cairn. It just occurred to me that I forgot to swear an iron vow to help Keegan get his husband back because I was just so, concerned about Bridget and Tessa. So I'm going to retroactively do that and go ahead and see if we can fulfill that vow. All right, I made it just a dangerous vow, and I think that we had filled up our progress bar. We made a lot of moves to get to this point, and killing that Yeti, I think, was the capstone on rescuing Garrett. So we got a strong hit, which is great. We get to mark 2 experience, and that vow is completed. We have rescued Keegan's husband, Garrett. They're going to settle down. They're going to try to make camp here. Karl's not going to be able to heal until he gets rid of that wounded condition. So he's going to try to bind his wounds as best he can. That's a miss and a match, which is, I think, again, we have not yet gotten an actual hit on a heal move the first roll. So a miss and a match on heal, not terribly surprising at this point. I think that he wastes all of the rest of his supply trying to bind his wounds and staunch the bleeding. He's really not able to do it very well though. So they're going to camp here. All right, roll supply, which is 0, which is statistically not going to work out well for us. All right, but on a weak hit, choose one. We will take a little bit of momentum, whatever we can get. After they've made camp at the base camp here, they're going to get any gear they can salvage and then head back to Cairn. Fortunately, with Garrett guiding them, this isn't going to be undertake a journey. They don't need to, do any rolls to successfully get back to Cairn. It's not too far, and Garrett knows the way quite well. They return to Cairn. They head back to Frozen Far Expeditions. They kind of tell the story to the 2 proprietors here. Garrett and Boy hang out with the proprietors for a little while. I think Garrett's gonna go off on his own. Karl and Haf now have Tessa, which is great. Karl and Haf and Tessa head to the Northern Lights Inn. They get settled in there. They're going to rest up. And most importantly, they're going to talk to Tessa and be like, what in the world has been going on the past few weeks? And we will find that out next episode. Thanks for watching.